Every single evening, a gentle dog named Rusty would sit in front of a massive old tree, barking like his life depended on it. Rain, wind, freezing cold, it didn't matter. He never left. People thought he was just being strange, until one morning, someone finally looked inside that tree. What they found hidden inside left the entire neighborhood shaken. In a sleepy little town, where nothing dramatic ever happened, one dog's strange behavior turned quiet streets into a scene of mystery and suspense. Rusty wasn't known for making noise, but then he started barking, non-stop, at a tree no one had ever paid attention to. At first, it was almost funny. Then it became annoying, and eventually terrifying. What could possibly be inside a tree that would make a loyal old dog refuse to move, night after night? Rusty wasn't the kind of dog to make a scene. If you asked anyone on Maple Grove Lane, they'd all say the same thing. That old mutt is more like a cat than a dog. He was quiet, slow-moving, and as gentle as they come. Kids could pull on his ears, and he'd just sigh. Delivery men could walk right up to the porch, and he wouldn't make a sound. In a world full of barking, bouncing dogs, Rusty was the calm in the chaos. And that's why, when he started barking, really barking, it sent chills down the neighborhood spine. Rusty lived with Mr. Harlan, a retired postman who had spent his life walking the same streets. He now strolled in leisure. The two had developed a routine so precise, you could set your watch by it. Every morning at 7:30, they'd take a slow lap around the block. At 12:15, they'd sit under the gazebo in Ridgeway Park while Mr. Harlan read the paper. And just before sunset, they'd walk the outer trail that curved around the edge of a neighborhood and passed by the tall oak trees lining the park's rear fence. It was on one of those ordinary sunset walks that everything changed. That Thursday evening started like any other. The air was crisp, touched by the fading light of early autumn. Leaves rustled underfoot, and the world smelled like distant wood smoke and cooling earth. Mr. Harlan wore his light jacket and flat cap. Rusty plodded along beside him, leash gently slack, as if even the tether between them was more habit than necessity. But then Rusty stopped. It wasn't the kind of pause that happens when a dog spots a squirrel or catches a whiff of another animal. No, this was different. He froze so suddenly that Mr. Harlan almost tripped over the leash. Rusty's gaze locked onto the base of a particular oak tree. It wasn't remarkable, just one of many lining the trail, but his whole posture changed. The hair along his spine rose like static, his ears pulled back, and then he barked. Not a yip or a playful woof, a deep, slow, guttural bark. Rusty, Mr. Harlan blinked, trying to make sense of the change. What in the world's gotten into you? The dog didn't move. He barked again, and again. The sound echoed through the park, bouncing off the trees like a warning. Mr. Harlan gave the leash a gentle tug. Come on, old boy. You're gonna scare someone. But Rusty didn't care. He was locked in. Mr. Harlan, thinking maybe a raccoon had burrowed into the roots or a stray cat was hiding in the branches, leaned forward and peered into the shadows at the base of the tree. Nothing, just dry leaves, dirt, and a few low-hanging branches. Still, Rusty barked. Eventually, with a sigh, Mr. Harlan pulled him away, muttering something about stubborn dogs and bedtime. But even as they left, Rusty kept turning his head to look back. That night, something even stranger happened. Rusty wouldn't settle. Usually, he'd curl up on his old blanket near the radiator and be out cold within minutes. But not that night. He paced, he whined, he scratched at the door. And when Mr. Harlan finally opened it, just to see if he'd calm down, Rusty bolted, not down the street, not to the neighbor's yard. He ran straight back to the oak tree. Mr. Harlan followed, flashlight in hand, slippers crunching on the gravel path. And there he found Rusty, sitting perfectly still at the base of the tree, staring up, unmoving, as if waiting for something or someone to appear. All right, boy, Mr. Harlan sighed. I don't know what's going on here, but you're gonna catch your death out here. He carried the dog home, but Rusty didn't sleep that night. He paced in circles by the front door, occasionally letting out low, anxious whines. Every time Mr. Harlan dozed off in his recliner, he'd be jolted awake by the sound of Rusty's nails tapping on the wooden floor. By 4 a.m., Mr. Harlan gave up and made a cup of tea. He opened the door to let Rusty out, hoping maybe the fresh air would calm him. But Rusty didn't sniff around the yard or chase after shadows like most dogs would at that hour. He sprinted straight to the tree, again, and when Mr. Harlan followed with a flashlight, there he was, sitting exactly where he'd been the night before, staring up into the gnarled branches like he expected something to move, to speak, to fall. By the third day, neighbors began to notice. Your dog okay, Harlan? Asked Mrs. Langford, peeking over her fence. I think he's fixated on something in that oak by the trail, Mr. Harlan replied. Maybe a possum or something? But Mrs. Langford frowned. Dogs don't usually act like that unless something's wrong. Mr. Harlan forced a laugh, but even he was starting to feel it. That low twist in the gut that tells you something's off, something that logic can't quite explain. Rusty refused to eat that morning. He took 2 bites of his kibble, walked away, and went back to the door, waiting, tail still, eyes fixed. By now, the barking had changed. It wasn't random or frantic. It was rhythmic, almost patterned. A few deep barks, a pause, a low growl, then more barking, over and over, like he was trying to speak in a language only he understood. Kids who passed by on their bikes slowed down to stare. Some recorded videos on their phones. Others crossed the street to avoid the tree altogether. And then came the smell. It was faint at first, just a hint of something sour, like old meat or wet leaves left too long in the sun. Mr. Harlan caught a whiff of it on the 4th night, when he once again followed Rusty down to the tree. He knelt down, ran his hand through the leaves at the base, then sniffed his fingers. He grimaced. Rotten something, he muttered. But when he shined his flashlight all around the base and even up into the lower branches, he found nothing. No animals, no trash, no strange marks or holes. Just Rusty, still, steady barking. That same night, something else happened. Rusty didn't just bark, he howled. It started low, almost like a moan, a long, stretched out wail that echoed across the park like a cry for help. Mr. Harlan had never heard that sound from him before, and he'd owned Rusty for 9 years. From across the street, lights turned on, curtains were pulled back. People looked out, wondering if a coyote had wandered into the neighborhood. But it was just Rusty, alone by the tree, howling like his heart was breaking. Mr. Harlan's neighbor, Ben, a middle-aged guy who worked nights at a warehouse, walked over the next morning. I heard him last night, he said, scratching his beard. That wasn't just barking, that was panic. Mr. Harlan nodded. I'm starting to think something's wrong with him. Maybe neurological. Ben looked thoughtful. Or maybe he's trying to warn you. Warn me. Ben shrugged. Dogs sense things we don't. Smells, sounds, energy, whatever it is, he's trying to tell you something. That night, Mr. Harlan decided to bring a shovel. He returned to the tree at dusk, Rusty glued to his side, barking with more urgency than ever. Mr. Harlan used the shovel to clear the leaves. Then he dug. He didn't know what he was expecting. Bones, a dead animal, buried garbage. What he found was a patch of old, weathered cloth buried just below the surface. He pulled it up. It was faded, shredded, and smelled awful, but it looked like it had once been a child's shirt. He turned it over. There was something dark smeared across the fabric, dried now, faint, but unmistakable. Blood. Mr. Harlan stared at it, frozen. Rusty stopped barking and sat beside him, panting hard, eyes still fixed on the base of the tree. For the first time, Mr. Harlan felt a chill that went bone deep, not from the cold, but from something else, something primal. Mr. Harlan stood frozen, that scrap of cloth in one hand and the shovel in the other. Rusty, too, had gone quiet now. He wasn't barking, wasn't growling, just sitting there, panting lightly, eyes locked on the tree. The silence made everything feel even heavier. It was as if the entire park had held its breath. Mr. Harlan slowly folded the cloth and slipped it into a small plastic bag he'd brought for trash. He wasn't sure why. Maybe out of habit, or maybe out of some instinct to preserve whatever it was he'd found. He stared at the base of the tree again. The roots were thick and twisted, pushing up out of the dirt, like the gnarled fingers of something trying to claw its way out. And Rusty didn't move. He sat there all night again, and Mr. Harlan sat with him. The next morning, Mr. Harlan did something he hadn't done in years. He went to the police station. It felt strange walking through the doors. The place had changed since his days delivering mail, but some faces were still familiar. Officer Daniels, now a graying sergeant, looked up from his desk and smiled. Harlan, everything all right? I'm not sure, Mr. Harlan replied, setting the plastic bag on the desk. Daniels raised an eyebrow. What's this? I think my dog found something. Daniels opened the bag carefully and studied the cloth. His face changed quickly, from mild curiosity to something else. Concern, caution. Where did you get this? He asked. Mr. Harlan told him everything. The tree, the barking, the digging, the smell, the shirt. Daniels nodded slowly. All right, we'll send someone to check it out. You said the dog's been barking there for how long now? Over a week. Daniels paused. Has anyone else seen or smelled anything strange near that tree? Mr. Harlan shrugged. Neighbors have noticed the barking. One said it smelled off. Another thought it was haunted. Daniels didn't laugh. He picked up the phone and made a call. Within 2 hours, a small team arrived at the park. Rusty was there, of course, still at his post, like a soldier on duty. When the officers got close to the base of the tree, he growled once, low, like a warning. Daniels held a hand up to the other officers. Let him show us. Rusty sniffed the ground, then began digging again, his paws moving quickly, his nose twitching as he tore through the dirt and old leaves. Then he stopped. He looked back at the officers. They dug the rest of the way with tools, carefully, gently. What they found, it wasn't just cloth. It was something no one expected. A small wooden box, about the size of a shoebox, old and rotting around the edges. They lifted it out carefully, brushing off the soil and debris. There were symbols carved into the wood, strange ones, uneven and rough, like they were done with a knife or broken glass. Inside the box, bones, small ones, and something else, an old, water-damaged photo of a young girl, smiling. Her name was scribbled on the back, Lily. Summer, 1989. Daniels turned pale. He whispered to one of the officers, who quickly pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Mr. Harlan felt like the ground was shifting under him. What is this?" he asked, heart pounding. Daniels didn't answer right away. He just stared at the photo for a long moment before saying quietly, "There was a missing persons case. Years ago, a little girl. She was never found. And you think this? I don't know, but we're going to find out." Rusty let out one soft bark. The officers looked at him like he was part of the team now. The investigation started that same day. Police cordoned off the area around the tree. Forensics teams came in with scanners and equipment Mr. Harlan didn't even recognize. Reporters showed up soon after, drawn by whispers of a possible cold case being reopened. The quiet park that had once been just a small slice of peace in the neighborhood had become the center of something much bigger. And Rusty, he didn't leave the tree, not even with all the people, not even with the flashing lights or the noise. He stayed rooted to that spot, like his job still wasn't finished. He wouldn't even come home with Mr. Harlan that night. So Mr. Harlan brought him food and a blanket and sat beside him in the grass, under that tree that had, until just days ago, meant nothing to anyone. But now, it held secrets, dark ones, long forgotten, and the dog, Mr. Harlan's dog, had been the only one who knew. News spread fast. By the next morning, the story was all over local media. Headlines read, "Dog discovers possible evidence in cold case. What's buried beneath the oak tree? Rusty the hero dog." But for those who lived in the neighborhood, it wasn't just a headline. It was real. That park, the tree, suddenly looked different, like it had always been hiding something. People walked slower near it now. Some wouldn't go near it at all, and others, they came to see the dog. Rusty had become something of a local legend overnight. People brought him treats, toys, even blankets. Kids left hand-drawn cards with his name on them. Mr. Harlan was overwhelmed. He never wanted this kind of attention, but something about the way Rusty sat there, calm, focused, almost like he was waiting, made it feel like none of this was about attention. It was about duty. Still, something didn't sit right. Late that night, Mr. Harlan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't sleep, not because of the media or the noise or the police, but because of something Rusty had done earlier. That afternoon, after the forensics team had cleared the area for the day, Rusty had gotten up for the first time in over a week. He left the tree, but he didn't go home. He walked to another tree, just a few feet away, and sat, then barked, once, then again, and again. Mr. Harlan had felt a chill run down his spine. "No," he whispered, "not another one." But Rusty didn't stop. The police came back the next day. They dug again, and they found something else. Another box, same carvings, same size, and inside, more bones. Another photograph, a name on the back, Elena, October 1992. Mr. Harlan was speechless. 2 trees, 2 boxes, 2 missing girls, and still, Rusty barked. The police began to take the case more seriously than ever. It was no longer a single incident. This was something bigger, something darker. They brought in a full investigative team, historians, crime analysts, even a dog behaviorist who specialized in scent work. Rusty had never been trained. He was just a regular dog, a mutt with a golden coat and kind eyes. But clearly, he knew something they didn't. The dog behaviorist, a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Claire Monroe, spent hours watching Rusty. She followed him to the trees, observed how he sniffed, circled, barked. "He's not reacting randomly," she said finally. "This isn't anxiety. It's not territorial behavior. He's pointing us to something specific. But how? Mr. Harlan asked. How could he know? Dr. Monroe looked at him and said something he'd never forget. Sometimes dogs pick up on things that science can't explain. She paused, then added, but if he's found two, there may be more. That single sentence shifted everything. The team began searching the park inch by inch. Metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs. They searched every tree, every bush, every strange patch of earth. But here's the part that chilled everyone the most. Rusty didn't react to most areas. He only barked at the trees, and he only barked at specific ones. By the end of the week, 3 more boxes had been uncovered, each one under a different tree, each one containing small bones, each with a photo, each photo with a different girl's name, written in fading ink. Police now had a timeline, a potential serial case spanning decades, hidden right in the middle of a neighborhood park, a place where kids played, where families picnicked, where dogs chased frisbees, and no one had any idea. Until Rusty barked, the park was no longer a park. What used to be a peaceful green space filled with laughter and dogs off-leash was now taped off with yellow barriers. Police vehicles lined the nearby streets. Crime scene tents dotted the grass. Helicopters buzzed overhead. The air smelled like damp earth and tension. Locals no longer visited with picnic baskets or jogged around the path. Instead, they stood outside the tape, watching, whispering. Some even wept. How could this have been here all along? How did no one notice? But the question that haunted everyone was simpler than that. Who did this? And why were the victims buried beneath the trees? Theories spun like wildfire. An old groundskeeper with a dark past? A long-forgotten drifter who moved through town decades ago? Or, what many feared most, someone who still lived nearby, someone who had watched those trees grow, watered them, maybe even sat beneath their shade and never said a word. But in the middle of all the fear and speculation, there was Rusty, still showing up, still choosing trees, still barking. Day after day, the same pattern repeated. Rusty would sit in front of a tree, quiet at first, then a single bark, then another. Then he'd pace, paw the ground, lie down and stare. It wasn't guesswork, it was intentional. And every time they dug where he barked, they found something. But here's where the story shifts, where the challenge deepens, and the mystery takes an even darker turn. One morning, Rusty went missing. Mr. Harlan woke up to an empty leash hook by the door. No sound of paws clicking on hardwood. No wet nose nudging for breakfast. Gone. Panic set in immediately. He checked the backyard. Nothing. The park, empty. Rusty had never wandered off. Not once. Mr. Harlan called the police. They sent an officer to help search, assuming maybe Rusty had slipped out to his usual post. But when they reached the park, there was no sign of him. No paw prints. No blanket. Just silence. That day dragged like a nightmare. Mr. Harlan stood at the edge of the park, calling Rusty's name until his voice cracked. The police offered little hope. Maybe he wandered too far. Dogs sometimes follow a scent and get disoriented. But Mr. Harlan knew better. Rusty hadn't gotten lost. Rusty had been taken. But by who? And why? And then came the phone call. An unknown number. Mr. Harlan hesitated before answering, but something deep in his gut told him he needed to. The voice on the other end was low, distorted. If you want your dog to stop barking, it said, keep him away from the trees. Click. Silence. Mr. Harlan dropped the phone. That was the moment he realized. This wasn't over. This wasn't even close to over. Mr. Harlan stood frozen at the edge of the park, his hands trembling. The phone call still echoed in his mind. If you want your dog to stop barking, keep him away from the trees. His first instinct was to rush into the park, to search for Rusty with everything he had. But something held him back. It wasn't fear. He wasn't afraid of what might happen to him. It was fear for Rusty. Fear that the dog might be in grave danger. And the clock was ticking. The police officer who had helped search earlier that day had returned to the scene, standing by a cluster of officers who were now combing the area. When Mr. Harlan approached them, his voice was tight with urgency. Have you found anything? Is Rusty okay? He demanded. The officer, Sergeant Malone, turned and gave him a solemn look. We haven't found anything, Mr. Harlan. We're looking, but it's strange. We've checked every inch of this park. There's no sign of him. It's like he just vanished. That doesn't make sense, Mr. Harlan said, shaking his head. Rusty's never left. Not like this. He wouldn't just run off. Sergeant Malone paused, clearly struggling with the situation. I know, but right now, we're working under the assumption that he could have wandered off. He's a dog. They get curious sometimes. But Mr. Harlan wasn't buying it. Rusty had always been loyal, always stayed close to him. There was no way he'd just run off for no reason. No, something was happening here. and it was far more sinister than anyone realized. Mr. Harlan stood there for what felt like an eternity, watching the officers sift through the grass, looking for any clue, any sign of his dog. But then something caught his eye. Near the edge of the park, where the trees were thickest, he saw something odd, a faint trail of disturbed earth, like someone had been digging. It wasn't much, just a small patch of freshly disturbed dirt, but it was enough to send a chill down his spine. He started walking toward it, his heart pounding in his chest. The police were too busy elsewhere to notice, so he followed the trail, moving quietly. It led him deeper into the thicket, further away from the beaten path. The trees were quieter here, too quiet. There were no birds chirping, no sound of the usual rustling leaves. The air felt thick with tension, like it was holding its breath. Mr. Harlan's steps faltered as he approached a large oak tree, one that Rusty had never barked at. But something about it felt wrong. The bark was gouged in strange, unnatural patterns. There was something hidden behind it, something buried deep within the roots. His hand shook as he reached down to pull away the dirt. His breath hitched as he uncovered an object, a large, weathered box, nearly identical to the ones they had found before. It was larger, though, and older. His heart skipped a beat. He looked around quickly, his pulse racing. He knew he needed to act fast. The box was too familiar, too eerie. He wasn't alone in this park. Someone had to be watching, and someone had to know about this. Without hesitation, Mr. Harlan grabbed the box and ran. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stay here. As he reached the edge of the park, he saw a familiar face. Sergeant Malone. Mr. Harlan, wait, what's that? The officer asked, his tone sharp. Mr. Harlan stopped, panting, and held up the box. I found it. I found another one. Sergeant Malone's face went pale as he examined the box. Where did you? I was following a trail, Mr. Harlan explained, his voice tight with panic. There's something buried under this tree, just like the others. This one, it's different. It's bigger. It's older. I can't explain it, but it feels like we're dealing with something bigger than we thought. Malone's jaw clenched. We need to open it. As they carefully pried open the box, the contents were unmistakable. More bones, more photographs. But this time, the picture was different. It was a faded black and white photo of a young woman, smiling. The back of the photo read, Grace, June 1984. Mr. Harlan's breath caught in his throat. Another name, another victim. Why did Rusty lead me here? Mr. Harlan whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Something was happening. Someone had been hiding this for years, maybe even decades. But it wasn't just about the bones or the missing people. It was about Rusty, the dog that had uncovered all of this, the dog that had never given up. They had a choice to make. They could keep searching. They could keep digging, hoping to uncover more secrets, more evidence. Or they could stop and risk letting the truth stay buried forever. But Mr. Harlan knew one thing. There was no going back now. The moment Mr. Harlan opened that box, he knew they were on the verge of something extraordinary, something life-changing. The photo of the young woman, Grace, June 1984, clutched in his hand, felt like a heavy burden. It wasn't just a forgotten piece of history. It was a cry for help, a sign that something sinister had happened long ago, something no one had ever spoken of. Sergeant Malone's face grew darker as he examined the contents. His fingers ran across the bones with an unnerving calmness, like he had seen this before. You've got to understand, Mr. Harlan, he said, his voice now thick with something unspoken. It's not the first time something like this has happened here. We've had reports over the years, strange disappearances, people coming back after years of being missing, but we've never been able to connect the dots. Mr. Harlan felt a wave of dread wash over him. How many people? How long had this been going on? What do you mean? We've had reports, Mr. Harlan asked, his voice rising. Why was no one looking into this? Why has it been kept a secret? Malone sighed deeply. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. But Mr. Harlan wasn't backing down. Try me. The officer hesitated for a long moment, looking around as if checking if anyone was listening. Then, in a low voice, he spoke. 20 years ago, there was a woman who lived near the park. She was, well, let's just say she had a reputation. Grace, the woman in the photo, she went missing, just like all the others. But something strange happened after that. People started hearing barking, persistent, unexplainable barking. And every time someone followed the sound, they'd find a trail of bones, just like this one. Mr. Harlan's stomach turned. Are you saying this has been going on for decades? Sergeant Malone nodded, his face pale. And there's more. The dogs. They've always been involved. I've seen it with my own eyes. Some of them start barking at the same trees. Others dig around the same spots, like they know, like they're guarding something. Guarding something? Mr. Harlan echoed. Guarding what? Malone looked around again, making sure no one was listening. I think it's not just bones they're guarding. There's something else buried here. Something far worse than anyone could imagine. Just as he finished speaking, a loud growl echoed through the park. Rusty! Mr. Harlan spun around in shock, his heart leaping into his throat. There, standing in the clearing near the same oak tree that had sparked all of this chaos, was Rusty. His fur was matted, his eyes wide with a wild intensity that Mr. Harlan had never seen before. Rusty! Mr. Harlan shouted, his voice breaking as he ran toward him. Come here, boy. You're okay. It's over. We're gonna get you home. But Rusty didn't move. He stood his ground, his growl deepening, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. Then, suddenly, Rusty took off, charging toward the base of the tree, his paws pounding the ground like a force of nature. Rusty, no! Mr. Harlan yelled, his heart racing as he sprinted after him. But it was too late. Rusty had reached the tree, and in one swift motion he began to dig. Furiously, relentlessly, his paws tore at the earth, throwing dirt and leaves in every direction. Sergeant Malone's voice cracked through the tension. Stop him. He's uncovered something. Without thinking, Mr. Harlan rushed to Rusty's side, grabbing the dog's collar and pulling him back with all his strength. The dog struggled against him, but it wasn't just the digging that had made him frantic. It was the truth. There, buried deep beneath the roots, was something that would change everything. It was a box. Another one. But this one was different. It was older. The metal was rusted, the edges crumpled, and the markings on it were unlike any the police had ever seen. It had a symbol, a strange, twisted design that looked almost like a warning. Mr. Harlan's breath caught in his throat as he looked at the box. This wasn't just some forgotten relic. It was the key, the final piece to a puzzle that had been missing for decades. With trembling hands, Mr. Harlan reached down and carefully pried open the box. As he did, the air seemed to still, the world around them holding its breath. And then he saw it. Inside the box was a small, faded journal. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. But it wasn't the book itself that sent a shiver down Mr. Harlan's spine. It was what was written on the first page. A name, Grace, and beneath it, in bold, frantic handwriting, the dogs know. They always know. Don't let them bury me. Don't let them bury the truth. Mr. Harlan's hand shook as he held the journal. It was clear now. This wasn't about forgotten bones or old mysteries. It was a warning, a call for help, and it wasn't over. Rusty had led them to this moment. He had uncovered the truth, and now they couldn't turn back. The discovery of the journal left Mr. Harlan speechless. The truth was right in front of him, written in the scrawled, panicked handwriting of a woman long gone. The dogs had always known. They had been the guardians, protectors of the secrets buried beneath the park for decades. But how could anyone have known such a thing? How could one retired postman and a loyal dog have stumbled onto something so dark, so hidden, in a quiet little town? As the police began to investigate the journal's cryptic message, the weight of the situation settled on Mr. Harlan's shoulders. He had thought that Rusty's strange behavior was just the quirks of an old dog, a playful nuisance that would eventually pass. But in reality, Rusty had been on a mission. He had been a silent witness to something terrible, something that had been covered up for years. The community that once viewed Rusty as simply a good boy now saw him as something else, a hero, not just a dog, but a protector of truth, a symbol of courage. His relentless barking, his refusal to stop, wasn't some meaningless act of disobedience. It was a cry for help, a warning that something far bigger was at stake. As the town started to piece together the puzzle, they realized that the mystery was just the tip of the iceberg. The more they dug into the history of the park, the more they uncovered. It wasn't just Grace's story. It was the story of many others, people whose names had been forgotten, whose lives had been erased from history. But now, they would be remembered. The investigation into the disappearances and strange occurrences in the park had begun. Slowly but surely, the truth was coming to light. Rusty's devotion had led them to the answers they needed, and for that, the town was forever grateful. But for Mr. Harlan, the journey wasn't over. The bond between him and Rusty had always been strong. But now it was unbreakable. Together, they had unraveled a mystery that had haunted the community for years, and though the town would never be the same, there was a sense of peace that came with knowing the truth. Rusty had done what no one else could do. He had brought the town's darkest secrets into the light, and in the end, that was more than just a loyal dog's bark. It was an act of love, courage, and unwavering determination. With Rusty's bravery at the forefront, Mr. Harlan knew their lives had changed forever, and no matter where their journey took them next, he would always remember the moment when a dog's loyalty saved more than just a life. It saved the truth. If you enjoyed this incredible story of bravery and discovery, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming and unforgettable animal stories. Don't miss out.